The alarm bells rang across the council tower. Their deep, haunting sound echoed through the crystal halls where 12 different species had worked together for 3,000 years. Today, that sound meant only one thing. Death was coming. Speaker. Velthari stood before the massive viewing screen in the main chamber. Her crystal body glowed with worry as she watched the reports flood in. The Void Swarm had reached the edge of their galaxy. Soon, everything they had built would be gone. "How long do we have?" asked General Korth. The big warrior's scales turned, dark blue with fear. His people had fought wars across 100 worlds. But this was different. 6 months, Velthari said. Her voice was calm, but inside she felt terror. Maybe less. The council chamber filled with the sounds of 12 different species all talking at once. Some spoke in clicks and whistles. Others used light patterns or chemical signals, but they all said the same thing. They were going to die. The Void Swarm had destroyed 17 galaxies. No one had ever stopped them. They ate everything. Planets, stars, even empty space seemed to disappear when they passed through. The few survivors who escaped always told the same story. The swarm could not be reasoned with, could not be stopped, and could not be killed. "We have the largest fleet in galactic history," said Admiral Thex. His mechanical voice buzzed with anger. "Our weapons can destroy planets. Our shields can stop anything." The Andromeda Coalition said the same thing, Velthari replied. They had ships twice as powerful as ours. The swarm ate them in 3 days. The room fell quiet. Everyone knew about Andromeda. The galaxy next door had been home to 50 billion souls. Now it was empty space, with a few dead rocks floating in the dark. Velthari walked to her private chamber after the meeting ended. The other council members argued about battle plans and evacuation routes, but she knew the truth. Everything they tried would fail. Every weapon they built would break. Every shield they raised would fall. She opened her personal terminal and started searching through the restricted files. Somewhere in all this data, there had to be an answer. The Council had information about every species in the galaxy. Surely one of them had found a way to fight the impossible. Hours passed. Velthari read about the Hive Collective and their trillion soldiers. The swarm had eaten them. She read about the energy beings who could become pure light. The swarm had absorbed them. She read about the machine empire with their perfect logic and endless calculations. The swarm had learned from them, then destroyed them. Every species that fought the swarm used the same methods. They built bigger weapons, stronger shields, smarter tactics. They all failed because they were fighting the wrong war. The swarm was not an army. It was a force of nature like a storm or an earthquake. How do you defeat a hurricane with a sword? Just as Velthari was about to give up, she found something strange. A small file buried deep in the new contact database. Species designation, human. Home planet, Earth. Status, recently contacted. Threat level, minimal. She almost skipped over it. What could a primitive species possibly offer? But something in the psychological profile made her stop and read more carefully. The humans had only just discovered they were not alone in the universe. They had no advanced technology, no energy weapons, no force fields. They could not even travel faster than light. By every measure, they were the weakest species the Council had ever encountered. But their psychological evaluation was unlike anything Velthari had ever seen. The report described humans as catastrophically persistent. It said They had a tendency to attempt impossible tasks with insufficient resources. When faced with certain defeat, they became more determined, not less. The evaluation team noted that humans seemed to view hopeless situations as personal challenges rather than reasons to surrender. Most interesting was a section about human military history. These creatures had spent their entire existence fighting each other, and they had developed some very strange ideas about warfare. They would sacrifice everything to win. They would use their own deaths as weapons. They would destroy their own cities rather than let enemies have them. The report included several examples. During something called World War II, humans had continued fighting even when their cities were being bombed every night. In a place called Stalingrad, they fought house to house, room to room, sometimes using kitchen knives when they ran out of bullets. They never surrendered, even when surrender would have saved lives. One human general had said something that stuck in the report. "We will fight on the beaches. We will fight on the landing grounds. We will fight in the fields and in the streets. We will never surrender." Velthari read that line again. Never surrender. Every other species the swarm had faced eventually gave up when the situation became hopeless. They evacuated their people, retreated to safe positions, tried to save what they could. It was logical. It was smart. It was what any reasonable being would do. But humans were not reasonable. The more she read, the more excited Velthari became. These creatures did not think like anyone else. When they could not win a fair fight, they cheated. When they faced superior enemies, they used dirty tricks. When they were outnumbered, they attacked anyway. The evaluation team had written a note at the bottom of the file. Recommend avoiding contact with humans until they develop more mature political systems. Their psychological profile suggests they would be extremely difficult to manage in any alliance situation. Velthari laughed for the first time in months. Difficult to manage. Perfect. She stood up and walked back to the council chamber. Most of the representatives had gone home to prepare for the end. Only a few remained, still arguing about impossible battle plans. "I have a proposal," Velthari announced. General Korth looked up from his strategic maps. "Unless you found a way to make our weapons 10 times more powerful, I do not want to hear it." "I found something better," she said. "I found a species that does not know when to quit." She activated the main display and showed them the human evaluation file. The room filled with confused sounds as 12 different species tried to understand what they were seeing. "You want to recruit primitives?" Admiral Thex asked. His mechanical voice sounded shocked. "They do not even have space travel." "They do not need space travel," Velthari said. "They need to be brought here, and then we need to get out of their way." "This is madness," said Counselor Vex. Her tentacles waved in agitation. "These humans have no advanced technology, no experience with galactic warfare, no understanding of the threats we face." "Exactly," Velthari smiled. "They are too stupid to know they cannot win." The debate lasted all night, but in the end, desperation won. When facing the end of everything, even madness started to look reasonable. The council voted to make contact with humanity. Velthari hoped she was right about these strange creatures, because if she was wrong, the galaxy would die anyway. But if she was right, the Void Swarm was about to learn what happened when you fought someone too stubborn to lose. Ambassador Hyun had never been more nervous in his life. His ship, the Harmony's Edge, hung in orbit above a small blue planet that most of the galaxy considered insignificant. But today, this little world might hold the key to saving everything. He looked at his reflection in the observation window. The medical team had done their best to make him look less alien to the humans below. His naturally purple skin had been changed to a pale brown color. His extra arms were hidden under a specially designed coat. His antenna had been removed completely, though that made him feel half-deaf. "Are you ready, Ambassador?" asked Captain Nira. She was one of the few crew members who knew the real reason for this mission. The others thought they were just making routine first contact with a primitive species. "No," Hyun said honestly. "How do you ask someone to save the galaxy when they do not even know the galaxy exists?" The shuttle ride down to Earth's surface gave Hyun time to review his mission files one more time. The planet below had over 7 billion humans living on it. They had split themselves into nearly 200 different nations, and many of these nations did not like each other very much. Some were actively fighting wars. This was not a good sign. How could he unite a species that could not even unite itself? The shuttle landed in a place called Seoul, in a nation called South Korea. The humans had chosen this location because it had good technology and was not currently at war with anyone important. Hyun hoped that was enough. A small group of humans waited for him at the landing pad. They looked nervous but curious. The leader was a woman in a white coat who stepped forward as Hyun emerged from the shuttle. "Welcome to Earth," she said in accented galactic standard. "I am Dr. Mina Park, head of the Xenobiology Department at Seoul National University. We are honored to meet you." Hyun was surprised. He had expected them to be more afraid. When most species first encountered aliens, they either ran away or started shooting. These humans just stood there, waiting to see what would happen next. "Thank you, Dr. Park," Hyun replied. "I am Ambassador Hyun of the Galactic Council. I bring greetings from the civilized worlds." Dr. Park smiled. "Civilized worlds? So there are uncivilized ones too?" The question caught Hyun off guard. He had given this same greeting to dozens of new species, and none of them had ever asked about the uncivilized worlds before. "Well, yes," he said. "Some species are more developed than others." "And which category do we fall into?" asked another human. This one wore a military uniform and had the bearing of a professional soldier. "I am Colonel Tae Kim, representing Earth's Defense Forces." Hyun hesitated. The truth was that humans were considered barely civilized by galactic standards. They still fought wars, still had poverty, still polluted their own environment. But saying that would not help his mission. "Your species shows great potential," he said diplomatically. Dr. Park laughed. "That is politician speak for you people are barbarians, but we are being polite about it." Colonel Tae nodded in agreement. "So what do you really want, Ambassador? Nobody travels this far just to say hello." Again, Hyun was surprised by their directness. Most species spent weeks on formal ceremonies and cultural exchanges before getting to the point. These humans wanted to know why he was here, and they wanted to know now. "Perhaps we should discuss this in private," Hyun suggested. They took him to a secure facility in the city center. The building was surrounded by guards, but Hyun noticed that the guards were watching the sky as much as the ground. These humans were already thinking about threats from space. Inside, a larger group of humans waited around a conference table. Scientists, soldiers, politicians, and people Hyun could not immediately identify. Dr. Park made quick introductions, but Hyun forgot most of the names immediately. "Before we begin," said Colonel Tae, "we need to know if this conversation is being recorded or transmitted to anyone else." "It is not," Hyun assured him. "This meeting is completely private." "Good," said Dr. Park, because we are about to discuss some very sensitive topics. First question, how long have you known about us? We became aware of Earth about 50 years ago, Hyun admitted, but the council decided to wait until you developed faster-than-light travel before making contact. So what changed? Asked a woman who had been introduced as Minister Lee. Why, are you here now? This was the moment Hyun had been dreading. He took a deep breath and activated his holographic display. The image showed the galaxy with a dark cloud spreading across one edge. We are all going to die, he said simply. The room fell silent. The humans stared at the display, trying to understand what they were seeing. That dark area is called the Void Swarm, Hyun continued. They are an extragalactic species that consumes everything in their path. They have destroyed 17 galaxies. Ours is next. Dr. Park leaned forward. How long do we have? 6 months. Maybe less. Colonel Tay stood up and walked to the display. He studied it carefully, like a general planning a battle. What have you tried so far? Everything, Hyun said. The Council has the combined military might of 12 advanced civilizations. We have weapons that can destroy planets, shields that can stop stellar energy, ships that move faster than light. None of it matters. The swarm adapts to everything we throw at them. So, why come to us? Asked Minister Lee. We do not have any of those things. We cannot even leave our own solar system. Hyun hesitated again. The truth would sound insulting, but these humans seem to appreciate honesty. Because everyone else fights logically, he said. You do not. The room erupted in confused voices. Some humans sounded offended, others seemed amused. Dr. Park held up her hand for silence. Explain, she said. Hyun activated another display, this one showing human military history. Every species the swarm has encountered follows the same pattern. When faced with superior force, they retreat. When their defenses fail, they surrender. When the situation becomes hopeless, they give up. It is logical behavior. But humans do not give up, Colonel Tay said slowly. Even when we should. Especially when you should, Hyun confirmed. Your species has a psychological profile unlike anything we have ever seen. You become more determined when facing impossible odds. You use your own deaths as weapons. You would rather destroy everything than let your enemies have it. Dr. Park was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. You came here because we are crazy. The technical term in our files is catastrophically persistent, Hyun said. I like crazy better, said Colonel Tay. So let me understand this. You have 12 advanced civilizations with superweapons, and you want help from one primitive civilization with nuclear missiles and bad attitudes. Yes. And you think this will work because we are too stupid to know when we are beaten. Yes. Colonel Tay looked at Dr. Park. Dr. Park looked at Minister Lee. Minister Lee looked around the table at the other humans. They all had the same expression on their faces. When do we start? Asked Dr. Park. Hyun blinked in surprise. You have not even consulted with your leaders yet. Do you not need to vote or have a debate or something? Ambassador, said Colonel Tay, let me explain something about humans. When someone threatens our home, we do not debate. We fight. When someone threatens our families, we do not vote. We kill them. And when someone threatens our entire galaxy, we get creative. Finished. Dr. Park, Minister Lee stood up. I need to make some phone calls. How soon can your people transport our military advisors to the war zone? You are actually going to help? Hyun asked. Ambassador, said Dr. Park, You just told us that some alien bugs want to eat our galaxy. Did you really think we would say no? Hyun felt something he had not experienced in months. Hope. These humans were just as crazy as their psychological profile suggested. And right now, crazy was exactly what the galaxy needed. There is one more thing, he said. The Council has authorized me to offer Earth full membership if you help us defeat the swarm. Colonel Tay grinned. You mean we get to join your fancy space club? What are the benefits? Advanced technology, interstellar trade, protection from external threats. Sold, said Dr. Park. But first, we kill some bugs. Hyun had been worried about how to convince the humans to help. He had prepared long speeches about duty and civilization and the greater good. Instead, it took 15 minutes and one threat to their home. As he watched the humans make their plans, Hyun began to think that maybe, just maybe, the galaxy had a chance after all. Admiral Kang stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched the greatest fleet in galactic history prepare for war. Ships from 12 different worlds filled the space around him, crystalline vessels that looked like flying cathedrals, living ships that pulsed with organic light, mechanical constructs the size of cities. Each one represented thousands of years of advanced technology. And then there were the human ships, sir, said his communications officer, Lieutenant Wan. The Council fleet commanders are asking about our unusual vessel configurations. Kang looked out at the human fleet and tried not to smile. Where the alien ships looked like works of art, the human vessels looked like they had been built in someone's garage. Cargo haulers with missile pods welded to their sides, mining ships covered in extra armor plating, even a few passenger liners that had been converted into troop transports. Tell them we prefer function over form, Kang said. The truth was more complicated. Earth had exactly 96 ships capable of space travel, and most of them were designed for moving freight around the solar system. When the call came to send a fleet to save the galaxy, humanity had grabbed everything that could fly and started making modifications. Admiral, called out his tactical officer, Speaker Velthari is requesting a strategy meeting aboard the Council flagship. Kang nodded. Signal the fleet, all senior officers to the luminous dawn in 1 hour. The Council flagship was everything. The human ships were not. Beautiful, elegant, and obviously expensive. Kang felt underdressed as soon as he stepped aboard. His simple military uniform looked shabby next to the ornate clothing worn by the alien officers. The briefing room was filled with beings from across the galaxy. General Korth's massive form dominated one corner. Admiral Thex's mechanical body hummed quietly near the central display. Speaker Velthari stood at the head of the table, her crystal skin glowing with nervous energy. We have received updated intelligence on the Void Swarm, Velthari began. They will reach the outer defense perimeter in 48 hours. The display showed a three-dimensional map of the battle zone. Red markers indicated swarm forces. Blue markers showed the Council fleet. The humans were represented by small, green dots that looked insignificant compared to everything else. Our strategy is straightforward, said General Korth. We establish defensive lines at these 3 choke points. Our heavy cruisers will engage the swarm's primary forces while our fighters provide cover for the defensive platforms. Admiral Thex nodded in agreement. Computer projections show a 63% chance of stopping their advance, assuming standard swarm tactics. Kang studied the tactical display and frowned. What happens when they do not use standard tactics? Excuse. Me? Asked General Korth. You said this strategy assumes they use standard tactics, Kang explained. What if they do something unexpected? Admiral Thex's mechanical voice buzzed with confidence. The swarm has used the same basic approach in every galaxy they have attacked. Overwhelming force applied at the strongest point of resistance. They do not deviate from successful patterns. Right, said Kang. And how did that work out for the other galaxies? The room fell silent. No one wanted to answer that question. Dr. June, Earth's lead scientist, spoke up from her position near the back of the room. If I may ask, what exactly are we fighting? I have read the reports, but I would like to understand the enemy better. Velthari activated a new display. The image showed something that looked like a cross between an insect and a machine. It had multiple legs, razor-sharp claws, and armor that seemed to shift and change as they watched. Individual swarm units are approximately 3 meters long and weigh about 200 kilograms, she explained. They operate as a collective consciousness, sharing information instantly across vast distances. They can adapt to new threats within hours of first contact. How do they reproduce? Asked Dr. Sue, another human scientist. They consume organic matter and convert it into new units, Admiral Thex replied. Planets, ships, even the crew inside those ships. Everything becomes raw material for the swarm. Dr. June raised her hand. What do they want? Why do they do this? General Korth's scales shifted to a darker color. Want? They are animals. They consume because it is their nature, like a disease spreads because it must. Kang exchanged a look with his officers. The aliens seemed to think of the swarm as a natural disaster, something to be endured rather than defeated. That was their first mistake. If I may, Kang said politely, I would like to suggest some modifications to the battle plan. General Korth looked annoyed. Admiral, with respect, your species has no experience with space warfare on this scale. Perhaps it would be better if you followed our lead. Of course, Kang agreed. But we do have experience with pest control. The alien officers looked confused. Velthari tilted her crystal head to one side. Pest control? Dr. June stepped forward. On Earth, we have dealt with similar problems before. Invasive species that consume everything in their path. The key is not to fight them directly, but to disrupt their behavior patterns. She activated her own display device, showing images of Earth insects. Locusts, for example. They swarm in huge numbers and eat every plant they can find. But they have weaknesses. They rely on pheromone signals to coordinate their movements. Disrupt the signals, and the swarm breaks apart. Admiral Thex made a sound that might have been electronic laughter. You are comparing the void swarm to insects from your homeworld. I am comparing one swarming species to another, Dr. June replied calmly. The principle is the same. Kang pointed to the tactical display. Your current plan puts our best ships directly in front of their strongest forces. That is exactly what they expect. Instead, we should make them come to us. What do you mean? Asked Velthari. Bait, said Kang simply. He gestured to his officers, and Lieutenant Hana stepped forward with a new tactical display. This one showed the human fleet spread out across the battle zone in what looked like a random pattern. We use our cargo ships as decoys, Hana explained. Fill them with organic matter to attract the swarm. When they move to investigate, our mining ships hit them with industrial explosives. General Korth stared at the display in disbelief. You want to use your own ships as bait? Empty ships, Kang clarified. We remove the crews first. And you believe this will work? Asked Admiral Thex. Captain Bin, one of Kang's senior officers, spoke up. Admiral, on Earth we have a saying. If you want to catch a bear, you do not challenge it to a fair fight. You dig a pit and wait for it to fall in. The alien officers spent several minutes discussing this plan in their various languages. Finally, Velthari turned back to the humans. This strategy is unconventional, she said carefully. It is insane, corrected General Korth. Yes, agreed Kang. That is the point. Dr. Sue activated another display. We have also been studying the swarms' feeding patterns. They seem to prefer certain types of organic matter over others. We think we can create artificial bait that will be irresistible to them. Using what? Asked Velthari. Dr. Sue smiled. Industrial waste. Earth produces millions of tons of organic garbage every year. We brought some with us. The room erupted in confused noise as 12 different species tried to understand what they had just heard. Humans wanted to fight the most dangerous enemy in the galaxy using garbage and empty cargo ships. This is madness, declared Admiral Thex. Engineer Wan stepped forward. Madness that might work. The swarm expects us to fight like civilized beings. They expect formations and tactics and logical responses to their attacks. They do not expect us to turn our own trash into weapons. General Korth looked around the room at his fellow officers. None of them seemed convinced by the human plan, but none of them had a better idea either. Very well, he said finally. We will try your unconventional approach, but if this fails, we are all dead anyway, Kang pointed out. At least this way, we die doing something unexpected. As the meeting broke up, Velthari approached Kang privately. Admiral, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you really believe this will work? Kang looked out at the human fleet through the observation window. His ships looked small and fragile compared to the alien vessels around them, but they were crewed by people who had volunteered to travel across the galaxy to fight an enemy they had never seen, for worlds they had never visited. Speaker Velthari, he said, 6 months ago, my species did not even know aliens existed. Now we are here, preparing to fight for the survival of the galaxy. If that is not impossible enough to give us confidence, I do not know what is. Velthari's crystal body pulsed with what might have been amusement. You humans really are as crazy as your files suggested? Thank you, said Kang. We take that as a compliment. As he returned to his ship, Kang felt the familiar weight of command settling on his shoulders. In 48 hours, they would face an enemy that had never been defeated. But for the first time since arriving in this strange corner of space, he was looking forward to the fight. After all, humans had always done their best work when the odds were impossible. The first wave hit 3 days early. Captain Hana was running final checks on her modified cargo hauler when the proximity alarms started screaming across the fleet. Through her viewport, she could see the edge of space itself seeming to boil, as the void swarm emerged from whatever dark place they called home. All ships, this is Admiral Kang, came the voice over the communications system. Enemy contact. Repeat. We have enemy contact. All units to battle stations. Hana had seen the intelligence reports, but nothing had prepared her for the reality. The swarm ships looked like living nightmares. They moved wrong, as if they were swimming through space instead of flying. Their hulls shifted and pulsed like infected wounds, and there were so many of them. Holy shit, whispered her gunner, Corporal Ray, from the turret below. How many of those things are there? Too many to count, Hana replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Remember the plan. We stick to the plan. The plan had seemed reasonable when they discussed it in the safety of the council chambers. Now, Facing the actual enemy, it felt like suicide with extra steps, but it was the only plan they had. The first engagement began badly for the Council forces. General Korth's heavy cruisers opened fire at maximum range, their energy weapons, lighting up space like artificial stars. The beams struck the swarm ships dead on, but the damage was not what anyone expected. "Target struck, no effect," reported one of the alien gunners. "The hull is adapting to our weapon frequencies." Admiral Thex's mechanical fleet tried next, launching waves of smart missiles that should have overwhelmed any defense system. But the swarm ships simply absorbed the explosions, their hulls rippling and reforming like liquid metal. "Impossible," Admiral Thex transmitted. "Nothing adapts that quickly." "They do," said Dr. June from her position on the science vessel. She was monitoring the battle through a dozen different sensors, trying to understand what they were facing. The individual ships are not just coordinated, they are connected. When one learns something, they all learn it instantly. Captain Bin's voice cut through the communications chatter. "Admiral, the enemy is adapting to our energy weapons. Request permission to begin Phase 2. "Permission granted," Kang replied. "All human vessels, execute the garbage protocol." Hana felt a grim smile cross her face as she activated her ship's cargo bay doors. Thousands of tons of organic waste spilled out into space, creating a cloud of Earth's finest industrial garbage. To the swarm, it must have looked like the greatest feast in galactic history. The effect was immediate. The swarm ships changed course, abandoning their attack on the Council fleet to investigate this new source of food. They moved into the garbage cloud like sharks drawn to blood. "Phase 3, go!" ordered Admiral Kang. Engineer Wan pressed a button on his control panel, and space exploded. The garbage had been more than just bait. Hidden inside each piece of waste was a small but powerful explosive charge. As the swarm ships began feeding, they triggered thousands of tiny bombs. The explosions ripped through their adaptive hulls faster than they could compensate. "Direct hits on multiple targets," reported Lieutenant Hana. "Enemy ships are breaking apart." But the celebration was short-lived. The swarm adapted even to this new threat. The surviving ships began scanning the debris more carefully, identifying and avoiding the explosive components. "They are learning," warned Dr. Sue. "The next wave will not fall for the same trick." "Then we try a different trick," said Captain Ray. Her fighter squadron was already moving into position for the next phase of the plan. The human fighters were not impressive by galactic standards. They were small, lightly armed, and barely faster than the swarm ships. But they had one advantage that the aliens had not expected. They were piloted by humans who had grown up playing video games. Ray led her squadron in a series of maneuvers. That would have been impossible for any logical military force. They flew in random patterns, constantly changing speed and direction. They used their own ships as shields, pulling maneuvers that put tremendous stress on both the vessels and their pilots. "What are they doing?" asked General Korth, watching the tactical display in confusion. "They are being unpredictable," replied Velthari. "The swarm cannot adapt to tactics that have no pattern." The fighters swarmed around the enemy ships like angry insects, never staying in one place long enough for the swarm to target them effectively. When they did attack, it was with weapons the swarm had never seen before. "Kinetic harpoons away," reported Ray as her fighter launched what looked like an oversized spear at the nearest enemy ship. The weapon punched through the adaptive armor and embedded itself deep in the hull. Then it exploded. Not with energy, but with a cloud of metal fragments that shredded everything around it. The swarm tried to adapt, but how do you defend against a weapon that is different every time? The humans had brought mining charges. construction, explosives, industrial acids, and even some weapons that no one could identify. "What exactly is that?" asked Admiral Thex as one human fighter launched what appeared to be a kitchen appliance at an enemy ship. "Microwave oven," replied Dr. June helpfully. "Modified to overload on impact. Creates a localized electromagnetic pulse." The improvised weapon worked perfectly. The swarm ship's nervous system, already damaged by previous attacks, shut down completely. The vessel tumbled through space dead in the water, but the swarm was learning from each exchange. They began sending smaller, faster ships to swarm the human fighters. The battle turned into a deadly game of cat and mouse, with both sides constantly adapting to new threats. "We are losing fighters," reported Ray. Her voice was strained from the constant high-G maneuvers. "These things are getting smarter." "Fall back to the defensive line," ordered Admiral Kang. "Let the big ships have a turn." The human capital ships were waiting in ambush among a field of asteroids. But these were not ordinary space rocks. Engineer, one had spent weeks hollowing them out and filling them with surprises. As the swarm pursued the retreating fighters, they ran straight into what the humans called the surprise party. The first asteroid exploded in a burst of superheated plasma. The second released a cloud of metal fragments that moved at nearly light speed. The third simply rammed itself into the largest enemy ship at full acceleration. Asteroid impacts across. "The enemy formation," reported the tactical officer. "Multiple enemy vessels destroyed or disabled." But even this success came with a price. The swarm was adapting faster now, learning from each encounter. They began scanning the asteroids before, approaching, identifying which ones were real and which ones were traps. "Admiral," said Dr. June, "I am detecting changes in their behavior patterns. They are becoming more cautious, more systematic. If this continues, they will adapt to all our tactics within hours." Kang studied the tactical display. The human fleet had performed better than anyone expected, but they were running out of tricks. The swarm still outnumbered them by thousands to one, and now they were becoming harder to fool. "Options?" he asked his staff. "We could retreat to the secondary defensive line," suggested Lieutenant Wan. "No," said Kang firmly. "If we retreat now, they will just follow us and adapt to our defenses there too. We need to end this here." Captain Bin looked up from his console. "Admiral, what if we stop trying to be unpredictable?" "Explain." "The swarm adapts because they expect us to keep changing tactics. What if we did the opposite? What if we gave them exactly what they expect?" Hana's voice cut in over the communications system. "You want us to fight fair?" "Hell no," replied Bin. "I want us to cheat so hard that fairness becomes irrelevant." Kang felt a slow smile spread across his face. It was a terrible plan. It would probably get them all killed. It was exactly the kind of insane strategy that might actually work. "All human vessels," he announced, "prepare for the stupidest thing we have ever done." As the remaining human ships formed up for their final assault, Admiral Thex's mechanical voice crackled over the communication system. "Admiral Kang, what are your intentions?" "We are going to ram them," Kang replied cheerfully. "Ram them!" "All of them. At the same time. With everything we have left." There was a long pause before Velthari's voice came over the communication system. "Admiral, that is suicide." "Yes," agreed Kang. "But it is suicide with style, and sometimes that makes all the difference." The human fleet accelerated toward the swarm formation at maximum speed. Every ship, from the smallest fighter to the largest cargo hauler, committed to a collision course with the enemy. It was the kind of attack that no sane military force would ever attempt, which was exactly why it might work. The suicide charge lasted exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds. In that time, the human fleet performed the most insane military maneuver in galactic history. Admiral Kang watched from the bridge of the Defiance as his ships slammed into the swarm formation like bullets fired from a massive gun. Each impact created a brilliant flash of light as matter met antimatter in violent combination. The explosions lit up space for millions of kilometers. Direct impact on the enemy flagship, reported Lieutenant Wan, his voice tight with excitement. The Seoul Express took out their command vessel. Captain Hana's cargo hauler had been loaded with every explosive device the human fleet could spare. When it struck the largest swarm ship, the detonation was visible from 3 star systems away. The enemy vessel simply ceased to exist, taking a dozen smaller ships with it. But the real surprise came after the explosions ended. The surviving swarm ships stopped moving. They hung in space like confused animals, their coordination broken. "What happened to them?" asked Dr. June from her sensor station. "The command ship," said Dr. Sue, staring at her readings in amazement. "They were all connected to the command ship. When we destroyed it, we cut them off from the collective consciousness." Velthari's voice crackled over the communications system from the Council flagship. "Admiral Kang, the enemy fleet appears to be disabled." "Appears to be," Kang agreed. "But for how long?" As if in answer to his question, the swarm ships began, moving again. But their movements were different now. Instead of the smooth, coordinated attacks they had shown before, each ship seemed to be acting independently. Some circled aimlessly, others attacked their own companions. A few simply drifted away from the battle. "They are fighting each other," observed General Korth. His voice carried a note of wonder that Kang had never heard from the alien warrior before. "Without central coordination, they revert to individual behavior," explained Dr. June. "Like ants, when you destroy their hill. They become confused and aggressive." Engineer Wan looked up from his console. "Admiral, I am detecting massive energy signatures from the system's primary star. Something is happening." Kang felt his blood turn cold. In all their planning, they had overlooked one crucial detail. The star system they were fighting in was not empty. It had a sun, and that sun was about to become a weapon. "All ships, emergency, retreat," he ordered. "Get us out of here now." But even as the human and council fleets began their desperate escape, Kang knew it was too late. The swarm had one final trick to play. The enemy ships that were still functional began flying directly into the system's star. At first, it looked like mass suicide. Then Kang realized what they were really doing. "They are destabilizing the star," reported Dr. Sue. "The star is going to explode. A supernova would destroy everything in the system and damage ships for dozens of light years in every direction. It was the ultimate scorched earth tactic. If the swarm could not have this galaxy, they would make sure no one else could either." "Out. Long?" asked Kang. 40 minutes until the star reaches critical mass," one replied. "We can reach minimum safe distance in 38 minutes if we push the engines beyond their safety limits." "Do it," Kang ordered. Then he opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, maximum acceleration. We have 38 minutes to outrun a star." The retreat was a nightmare of overheated engines and structural stress warnings. Ships that had never been designed for high-speed flight pushed themselves to the breaking point. Several human vessels lost power and had to be towed by the faster council ships. Captain Ray's fighter squadron served as a rear guard, harassing the few swarm ships that tried to follow the fleeing fleet. Her pilots pulled maneuvers that should have killed them, buying precious seconds for the larger ships to escape. 15 minutes to detonation, reported Juan. All ships are at minimum safe distance except... He paused, checking his readings. Again. Except what? Demanded Kang. The Bright Dawn is falling behind. They lost their main engine during the battle. Kang looked at the tactical display. The Bright Dawn was a Council science vessel carrying over 300 researchers. They would never reach safety in time. Signal the Dawn, he ordered. Tell them to prepare for emergency evacuation. But Captain Bin's voice cut across the communications channel before Kang could continue. Negative on the evacuation, Admiral. We have a better idea. Bin's heavy cruiser, the Iron Will, had taken severe damage during the battle. Half its weapons were offline, and its hull was breached in a dozen places. It should have been limping toward safety like the rest of the fleet. Instead, it was turning around. Captain Bin, what are you doing? Asked Kang. Buying time, sir. The Dawn needs another 10 minutes to reach safety. We can give them that. Kang understood immediately. Bin was going to fly his ship directly into the destabilizing star. The Iron Will was loaded with the same antimatter charges they had used against the swarm. If he could trigger a controlled detonation at just the right moment, he might be able to delay the supernova long enough for the Dawn to escape. Captain, that is suicide, said Velthari. Yes, ma'am, Bin replied cheerfully, but it is suicide with a purpose. That is the best kind. The Iron Will accelerated toward the star at maximum speed. Kang watched on the tactical display as the A ship's heat signatures began climbing beyond safe levels. No human technology was designed to get that close to a star. 8 minutes to safe distance for the Dawn, reported Juan. 6 minutes until the Iron Will reaches optimal detonation point. Captain Bin, Kang called out, you do not have to do this. Actually, Admiral, I think I do. This is what humans are for, right? Doing the impossible when nobody else can. The Iron Will disappeared into the star's corona, its hull glowing white-hot from the intense radiation. For a moment, Kang thought they had lost the ship entirely. Then Bin's voice came through the static one last time. Tell my wife I love her. Tell Earth we did not embarrass ourselves, and tell the Council that humans keep their promises. The explosion that followed was visible from neighboring star systems. The Iron Will's antimatter charges detonated at the precise moment of stellar collapse, created a chain reaction that turned the supernova into something else entirely. Instead of expanding outward in all directions, the star's death throes were channeled into a focused beam that shot harmlessly into empty space. The dawn is clear, reported Juan quietly. All ships have reached minimum safe distance. The fleet watched in silence as the star system died. Where once there had been a sun and planets, now there was only a slowly expanding cloud of gas and debris. The swarm ships that had caused the explosion were vaporized instantly. Total enemy casualties? Asked General Korth. All of them, replied Dr. June. The entire swarm fleet is gone. But the victory felt hollow. The human fleet had lost 37 ships during the battle, including some of their best captains. Earth's first major space battle had been won, but at a terrible cost. Admiral, said Velthari, I have received word from the outer monitoring stations. The main swarm fleet has stopped its advance. They appear to be confused. Kang looked up sharply. Confused how? They are no longer moving in coordinated formations. Individual ships are breaking away from the main group. Some are actually fighting each other. Dr. Sue checked her readings and smiled for the first time in hours. The destruction of the regional command center has disrupted their entire network. Without central coordination, they are reverting to individual behavior patterns. Like ants. Without a queen, added Dr. June. Admiral Thex's mechanical voice carried a note of amazement. You have not just defeated this swarm fleet. You have broken the entire swarm collective. The implications hit Kang all at once. The Void Swarm had seemed unstoppable because they operated as a single coordinated entity across multiple galaxies. But that coordination required command centers, and command centers could be destroyed. Signal the Council fleet, he ordered. We have work to do. The cleanup took 6 months. Human and Council forces hunted down individual swarm ships across 17 star systems. Without their collective consciousness, the creatures were dangerous but manageable. They fought like wild animals instead of an organized army. When it was over, the galaxy was safe for the first time in millions of years. The Void Swarm was extinct. Their threat ended forever by a species that had learned to fly less than a century earlier. At the victory celebration on the Council homeworld, Velthari presented Admiral Kang with the highest honor the galactic civilization could bestow. As he accepted the crystal medal, she whispered something that only he could hear. Thank you for being exactly as crazy as we hoped you would be. Kang smiled. Thank you for giving us something worth being crazy about. Later, as the human fleet prepared to return to Earth, Kang stood on the bridge of a new ship. The Defiance had been destroyed in the final battle, but the Council had built him a replacement using the best technology from all 12 species. So what now, Admiral? Asked Lieutenant Wan. What does humanity do for an encore? Kang looked out at the stars, thinking about Captain Bin and all the others who had died to save worlds they had never seen. Somewhere out there, Earth was waiting for news of the battle. His people would want to know if their sacrifice had been worth it. Now, we go home, he said, and we start figuring out what other impossible